Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon.
That's it?
Jared Brandon.
It's just going to be Jared Brandon.
Okay.
Sorry,
Jared is talking on a really, really, really small microphone in a really big room.
It's the one that Bob Barker used for many years.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, on the lung stick.
Hey, everybody, this is Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. So thrilled to death that you are listening to our show. I've been waiting for this one for weeks. I've been planning it for a couple months, actually.
You've been planning it for years.
Several months. Several months.
Are you a horse now?
And because this is... Well, first, let's introduce our guest. Guest, introduce yourself.
This is Chris Gill.
Okay.
I'm a contributor to Guitar World magazine. My history goes back, I think, as I mentioned, with the Van Halen book. I just did the Eruption Conversations with Eddie Van Halen that came out 6 months ago. Also used to work at Roland back in the mid-'80s to the early 90s. Just a crazy guitar collector, pedal collector, amp collector.
Man knows his way around the gear.
That's awesome.
You've been writing about gear for about how long?
Oh my God! Well, I started. Pretty much my job at Roland when I started there was to do all their catalogs and brochures. And Roland puts out, at least at the time, was putting out about 250 to 300 products a year.
Wow!
So that was almost like I had to do almost like a brochure a day, and then a big catalog.
Wow!
And then NAMM time, I had to do all these new product releases and things like that.
No pressure.
So I kind of just fell into that. I mean, I might exaggerate. I think it was probably about 200 products a year, actually, that they did. But so there was that. And I guess a lot of that was my attention to detail, was just, having to know all the features of this, that, and, having to know the competitors and what they had and that sort of thing. But I was just a gear nut to begin with anyways. I just, I was like a diehard reader of Guitar Player magazine and always looking at all the catalogs from every place. Whereas PMI back here in New Jersey, or the Musician Supply catalog in El Cajon, California, or wherever, and just always lusting over gear, as it was. And I had a brother who was an electrical engineer, and he used to build me stuff. The Paya catalog, one of the Paya flangers was one of my first effects. So, but just always had this passion for stuff and collecting, and I would buy stuff and it would just go into this black hole. It would go in and never leave.
Well, you mentioned the interview with Eddie Van Halen, Conversations. It's called Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. We had you on. That was in September of last year.
Wow.
I know. And so that's how long we've been planning this episode. And that is episode 236. Anybody new to the show, I would highly recommend going back and listening to that, because you have, from several horses' mouths what happened back in the day. So, but let's talk about right now, because right now, oh my goodness, I'm excited about this.
What are we going to talk about?
This is Japanese Pedals 101.
Oh,
Jared's favorite, and the favorite of many a listener,
Including me.
Including Chris. So
this is going to be a good one.
It really is, because there's something magical, mysterious, alluring, unattainable, and they're made of unobtainium, all of that stuff. And really, they set the foundation for basically a lot of what our modern sounds are. So we're going to dive deep. And the reason is why would we have Chris on to talk about this? Well, in the episode 236, he kind of, they were jokingly saying, "Oh, Chris has over 500 pedals." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're just, turn a phrase." Brad Talinsky, the editor-in-chief of Guitar World, said, no, he actually really does have over 500 pedals. And I was like, wow, okay, how can we use this guy to help us all learn a lot of stuff? And this was the first thing that came to my mind, because I had just purchased the Maxon flanger from the 80s.
Cool.
So anyhow, he's obviously given us a little dose of why he's qualified to talk about a lot of this. And he has, he's listed off a bunch of stuff I've never heard of, which is great because now we're going to learn some stuff. So awesome show ahead. Everybody buckle up and hope you enjoy and take notes. Okay.
It will be a test.
Yeah. We will all fail except you, I'm sure. We need to just say a few announcements here real quick. We need to thank
Rode.
Yes, Rode Mics for supplying our lovely instrumentation here and keeping us going every single week. And a big shout out to our pal Nick down there at Rode.
Hey, Nick.
I also wanted to share a couple things. First of all, I got a nice little note from somebody on Instagram. It said, this is from Vinny, not my guitar, but a gentleman named Vinny. And he says, amp knowledge. It said, hi, everyone. Todd, after listening to lots of your questions about amps, I think you would like and gain a lot from the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast. Thanks for all the work you do. And I was like, hey, that's cool. When I have some time, I'm definitely going to check that out. And I appreciate Vinny for, kind of saying, hey, there's this thing over here. That's how we all learn. That's how all of this gets all spread out. Because we like, if you like that, oh, you should check this out. And then we tell somebody, and then that person tells somebody, and then pretty soon everybody knows everything, or is enjoying their time. The other thing I wanted to point out on a slightly more, I think, serious and maybe big heart kind of note is I was contacted by David Gehring of Effects Layouts, and that he was on a previous episode. I can't access that right now because I'm talking about this, but go look for yourself. He's a super good dude making all kinds of really good stuff, and he and a lot of other builders are working on a few things right now, and it's called Pedals for Ukraine.
Oh, cool.
And so I said, hey, do you have like some kind of PR thing I can just, read off so I'm not messing this up? Because they've obviously put a lot of thought into it. And I checked it out, and essentially this is what it is. So if you don't mind, I'll just read this off. It says, we are a collective of effects pedal makers who have come together to raise money for the humanitarian causes. Auctions are ongoing for handmade pedals with some very talented builders. Here's how it works. Bidding will be done in the comments of each auction post on Instagram. The winning bidder will use the provided link to make a donation directly to one of the charities listed in the auction post. Winning bidder will provide a proof of donation to pedalsforukraine@gmail.com. Maybe you can get a hold of them, and if you have ideas or you have a pedal, or you're a builder and you want in on this, and then they will mail you the pedal. It says, we have chosen to focus on the following charities at this time, in no particular order. The World Central Kitchen.
That's a good one.
The USA for UN Relief Agency, and Doctors Without Borders. That's a very important one. Yeah, so this is from Pedals for Ukraine, and they've got, I believe it's Pedals for Ukraine on Instagram as well. You'll find it. Just look around. And if you can't, DM us and we'll connect you. But what's really cool is like it's not just a pedal. It's like they're making them all specifically for this. So you're going to get colorways, yellow and blue colorways, and all kinds of unique things because they're essentially one-offs. You're not buying one of like 100 or something like that. So highly recommend doing this. You're not only supporting the people who are, all the unfortunate events that are happening. You're helping humans out just like yourself, but you're also helping other humans just like yourself who love gear and who are making it for you. So please go check that out. With that, let's find out what's going on in our music worlds this week. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with Tony and then kick it over to Chris.
Sir Anthony to you.
Sir Tanya Bolonsky. Go ahead.
Well, Todd, this week was actually a fun week. A friend of mine was liquidating some items.
How come we always hear about this kind of stuff after the fact?
That is on purpose.
That's messed up.
It is on purpose.
No.
No, anyhow, so my friend Jeff and I had we did some trades back and forth, and he needed some parts for things, and I blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, I've got some stuff listed on my Reverb site. Why don't you take a look, see if there's anything you want? And so he sent me a photo of this guitar that I'd never seen before. And in fact, I've talked to several people since, and they're totally unaware of them, including one guy who is from Germany or was born in Germany. And it is an Otwin Harmony. It's like a jazz box. And it's got a single cutaway. It's got two pickups that are mounted to the pickguard, so it's a totally floating system. And this is probably from the late 50s, if I had to guess. Jeff told me he got it from a woman who said that her father brought it from Germany when he came to the United States back in the 50s. So it's really cool.
I don't know why, but I imagine she sounds like Loretta Lynn.
You think?
My daddy bought me these things when I was just 4 years old.
It's quite possible. I don't know. I didn't ask him to, give me an impression of what she sounded like. But anyhow, it's a very cool guitar. As is typical with a lot of German stuff, the controls really don't make a lot of sense. There's two knobs on it and then a switch that has 3 stops. And, Todd, what would you say that was?
Go, wait, and stop. No. First pickup, middle position, bridge pickup.
Right. You'd be wrong.
Okay.
So the switch is
figured.
The switch, and this is all I flipped the guard just to see, and this is all factory wiring. And in the full,
chocolate, vanilla, strawberry.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
So in the full down position, it goes to ground, which is off.
Huh.
And then in the second position, it is the bridge pickup,
which is always the hardest one.
And then the first cut is the deepest. And then in the third position, it is the neck pickup. And if you wiggle just in between the two of them, you can get both pickups.
Huh.
Now, you may be asking yourself, the two knobs on that pick guard, what do you think they do?
Volume and tone.
You'd be wrong.
Oh.
Because
sprinkles or peanuts.
It's volume and volume.
Oh.
No tone needed.
Interesting.
But it's a really cool guitar. I'm very pleased with it. And, it's just one of these oddball things. There's not a lot of information. I found a German guitar website that had an article, of course, in German. And I could kind of pick through some of it, but thanks to Google Translate, you can actually open up the thing and it will translate it for you. Now, not always very good. Some of the words have made absolutely no sense.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was something, the word was, you would think it would be something different, but it was like impact.
Oh.
Or blow was the thing.
Yeah.
Blow guitar is the...
Okay.
So, no, it's probably not
right.
the intent.
Yeah.
But anyhow, very cool. I'm very pleased. And I just, there's something... I love playing guitars that are older than me.
Yeah. There's not many.
And there's not a lot of them left.
If you can get that switch to stay in the center position, you can just use the volume knobs to actually... as tone knobs, if you can get the middle position to stick, to have both pickups on at once.
Oh yeah, how would that be a tone though?
Well, because when you turn down the bridge, you're going to get
more bassy sound.
More, yeah, and then when you turn down all the in betweens is your tone. It's basically the pickups are not necessarily choking each other, but it's kind of a choke.
Yeah.
So you're actually getting some different values coming out of as far as sound. So.
Well, the other thought I had was just to put controls on, save the harness as it exists.
Yeah.
but put a new, something that makes more sense.
A whole new thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that was my week this week.
This week.
That was your week this week.
That was my week this week.
Chris, how about yourself?
Let's see. I just just getting ready for this episode. I did a little bit digging around, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But it was I had to get something that came out in November by Free the Tone. It's called what is it called? Crunchy Chime.
Ooh,
that's like completely. Those words are like
sounds delicious.
That's my favorite flavor. Is crunchy chime, and I couldn't resist that. So that arrived in the mail here just recently, and also I have a bunch of EBOs, and the one that I'm missing is the black one with the white logo. And that's on the way. Actually, it hasn't shown up yet, but I'm just waiting for that one because I'm looking at these EBOs that I have and said, I'm just missing that one. And me being a collector, it's like you just got to have the whole collection.
Now, we may have some listeners that don't know what an EBO is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
To the best of my knowledge, because these things are like wrapped in plastic. It's just like this. What do you call it? It looks like a pickup that you hold over the pickup. Mm-hmm. It's kind of bent in this kind of a V shape, but it's basically a string driver, which I think it's basically my best guess, and I've never opened one up and never done the surgery, and I don't know anyone who has, but I think it's some type of magnetic spinning device or something on a motor or something. I don't know, but it basically just causes it's like a violin bow, electric bow.
Yes.
EBO?
Yes. And Free the Tone doesn't come up too often on the show, but they make some pretty outstanding stuff. Can you just give any information on Free the Tone for us?
Oh yeah, I was actually going to get into that a little bit later, but I'm trying to remember the name of the guy there. But he's like a genius. He's one of these guys who over engineers everything. He designs everything as if it was like a high end. Audio piece, like a Neve console or something like that. So even if it's just a pedal, it's like completely over engineered, and just incredibly well built. Let's see, Yukihiro Hayashi.
Yeah,
is his name, and but yeah, he just has been making some great stuff, and it's kind of very in the pedal world, it's very sensible looking. It doesn't have any outrageous graphics or anything like that. Kind of comes in these nice muted colors, but they are just really well built. They sound good throughout the entire range. He's not really copying anybody. It's really his own design, and he does just incredible work. It's really top notch, and it's not cheap, but it's not super expensive either.
Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me, I kind of lump them in the class with like Origin Effects or even like Source Audio, just that kind of like, it's almost like hi-fi gear.
Very much so, yeah. Although it's still, you think hi-fi, you think cold sterile, but it's extremely musical. I mean, it's like, again, like I say, like a Neve console.
Hi-fi in the sense of the engineering and build that goes into it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that sounds super fun. Jared, how about yourself?
I was in Ohio a few weeks ago, and I brought back a bunch of guitars. And I'm just slowly getting this room where I may have touched on this before, but just slowly getting this room organized. And I think I'm going to prioritize fitting all my guitars in here over everything else in existence.
Yeah.
Because I think this is the last place I'm going to be for a long, 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 long time. So it's kind of like the guitars have to stake the claim to the land in this room.
What have you considered like getting some slat board,
some racks, or something,
and doing one wall up so you can hang them there?
That house is not; those walls are not built for that. It's like
not.
Loads of windows, this big tall A-frame stuff. He'd be better off getting some like swing tree racks or something like that.
Okay,
yeah, something like that. So I'm working it out. I think I need to bring another piece of furniture up here.
But right now, Jared he was working on the wet bar in that room, and he's actually under the sink, and I think he's a little bit stuck. He might be there for the rest of the thing. That's why it sounds like that.
Yeah.
He was trying to fix the leak.
Microphone?
Yeah. So cool. Well, so Chris and I were and the crew was talking a little bit earlier because ask me, Tony.
Why, Todd?
Well, because it's my turn to say what's going on this week. And I got a lovely box of goodies from
Chocolates? Did you get some chocolates?
It was from Joe Halliday over at Hello Sailor.
Hello, Sailor.
Yeah, and he sent me a customized, as only he can do, extremely customized, one-off awesomeness of a fuzz face.
Fuzz face.
Which I have never played. I've never been interested. I've never touched them, and I will claim some ignorance factor to that. They just haven't excited me for any reason. And he sent me this one. It's black and gold and the whole 9 yards. And he did a whole bunch of crazy stuff to the insides, and there's insane NOS stuff. He gave me a list of all the things that he did, and I plugged it in, and I was like, "Hello, Dolly. Okay, now I gotta learn everything about fuzz faces."
You're a regular Jimi Hendrix.
Oh man. Well, one of the reasons that I hadn't gravitated towards those is frankly because I've always associated them with maybe a specific sort of 60s kind of fuzz and Voodoo Child and all that. I'm like, that's not what I do, so I don't want that. And it's old. It hasn't caught up with us and all kinds of nonsense, right? I'm telling you. Oh man, that sounded good on that Marshall. My goodness. Mm-hmm. And especially with the new pickup, the new Brandon One pickup that's specially made for me. And I think he's going to make a bunch more of them. I was blown away, and I was like, okay, because Joe made it, I kind of know what's in it, and I kind of, so I want to find out. I dove into starting to learn all about that. And so I'm going to try to get a couple and just kind of compare them and stuff. And I thought, as I was trying to learn more about it, I determined, well, from a sound standpoint as well, not just like the history of them, that if I, did that, and maybe even based on a couple of the other pedals, we maybe start doing a little bit of listen to, doing some demo-y stuff, for our YouTube channel, which really right now just houses each of our podcasts every week. By the way, you can listen to our show on YouTube. You can only see our dumb faces statically, but we are there. So anyways, that was really fun. And also I've got one from Jonathan Jerusik of 12th Hour Devices.
That's right.
He built me one for that.
That's right.
So even I haven't had a chance to compare the two, but I'm very excited about this whole new world of sound that's been kind of opened up for me now that I've been using the Marshall instead of the Supro. I still play the Supro, but I'm doing this world right now. So
$100 cash money, I'll take it off your hands.
Anyways, let's get on with the stuff that we are really excited to talk about. So, ladies and gentlemen, here comes Japanese Pedals 101. Where this was rooted. I did mention I was like, hey, I got this Maxon thing, and I started digging into all kinds of stuff. When I started playing, that's kind of all there was like Japanese pedals, it seemed like. At least the ones that people around me had and that I had access to. And we're talking about Boss, we're talking about Ibanez and Maxon and some Yamaha stuff. What I found to be interesting, slightly biased, because I do, as I mentioned, have a fascination with feudal Japan and Japanese culture, and it's just super interesting to me. I started being rather amazed by the variance of costs of some of these things, and what was driving some of those things, and then learning more about not just the huge makers, but all these other random like things that are made that don't have a lot of visibility to. So I thought this is something that people are very obsessed with, or else they wouldn't be paying several $100s for a 50-year-old flanger. That doesn't make sense. So why? And I was like, let's talk about the why. Let's understand the why. And that's when Chris Gill happened upon us. And so I thought, here we go, match made in heaven. Let's get it on. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have him on to talk about a bunch more of this, probably about like fuzz faces and stuff, because that's super exciting. I'm just saying, but
how self-serving of you.
Well, no, I'm going to open this. I'm going to open this up because if you have something that you're like, I want to know the big story on X, send it to us. We'll see what we can do, okay?
Like John Doe and Gene?
No, but I will be seeing them very soon. Very excited. Chris.
Yes.
I open the floor to you.
Cool. Well, yeah, Japanese pedals. Where do you begin? 101. I mean, I think for me it was, I'm a kid of the 70s, and I couldn't afford a lot of stuff. And I had a brother who I'd have build me stuff from kits, and like Heath Kit and Paya and stuff like that. But I always was fascinated with a lot of these things, these pedals. And I actually remember very well, like one of the first pedals I was going to buy, and I actually sent away the money to PMI in New Jersey, sent away my check, in the mail back before PayPal. You had to send a check, you put a stamp on an envelope and send it off into the wild blue yonder and wait, about a month or two before that thing you ordered showed up. And I ordered an original Octavia. I really wanted it. I loved the idea of this octave up effect. It's like, how cool could that be? Wow, higher, more range out of my guitar. It didn't show up because it had been discontinued. So that's really sucked. But my pedal obsession really began, I'd say, about 1979, 1980. I got a Boss CE2 Chorus. And what I loved about that was just how robust the damn thing was. It was just like built like a tank. You could not destroy it. Mm-hmm. I had friends who had electroharmonic stuff, and I love that stuff now. But back in the day, I just thought it was cheap junk because it was in that those thin bent steel boxes that you stepped on it too hard and it got smashed, and you had to really pamper them, and I just thought the quality was there, and that kind of started off down this whole journey. But I guess, to kind of bring it out of my perspective is just, I think one thing about the Japanese is that they pushed the envelope rather early on. I mean, we know the whole history in the 60s with, the fuzz box, the Maestro fuzz box and the FC1, we also had the Yarman tremolo, before that, which you can't even call a stomp box. It was just this device that you plug between your guitar and your amp and had an on-off switch that you had to operate manually. But there wasn't much out there, and it was all pretty primitive. And I think one of the first, and I can't say the first in that type of hyperbole necessarily. I'm sure there might have been other stuff before it, but the one pedal that stood out to me was the Univibe. Here was something advanced and really different. It just wasn't a distortion. It wasn't a wah filter or something like that. This was something that really did something crazy with the sound. And of course that came from Japan. And I kind of always looked at them, then later on we had, the Boss Chorus. I got the CE2, which is the second chorus, but there was the CE1 before that. And I actually played in a punk band in 1980 and had one. And it was like, wow, this one's actually even better than this little box I've got here, but it's huge, and I've got to plug it into the wall, or whatever. And it was just like, I just, I'm going to stick with this little guy here. But that began an obsession. But I think it's fascinating because it's, I ended up working for Roland in the mid 80s and learned a lot about the history of the company then. And of course, working at Roland, you get to meet, at the time when he was still alive, Mr. Ikutaro Kakahashi, the genius behind that. And of course, he had a company that was before that called Ace Tone. And, Ace Tone, of course, invented the drum machine, basically. And they also had a bunch of really cool pedals, including some fuzz pedals. There was also a fuzz wah And I think that was one thing that was interesting is that I don't know whether he was the first or not, but he was among the first to do these combined effects in one box. We saw that later in Roland with the double beat, which was the wah fuzz. We saw that with the jet phaser, which was fuzz and phase shifter. So I just saw that Mr. Kakahashi was very visionary with this type of thing. So that was just kind of, the big beginning of my fascination. Of course, there's been other companies that came up. I mean, obviously Maxon came up in the 70s as well, and, Boss's wake. The Tube Screamer changed everything, but everybody figured out the Tube Screamer after the good ones, were out of production, basically. It was kind of an interesting thing. But
and just before you go any further, you mentioned the Tube Screamer. I'm sure you're going to mention, I'm sure Ibanez is going to come up right after that. Just for clarity, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Maxon, Ibanez.
Oh, it had to be Maxon. I mean, Ibanez was basically, Ibanez, it's funny because I just did a deep dive into their history, but I had to turn it into a 3,000-word story for Guitar World here because we don't have room to write long stories anymore. But that was something that came up, and I think it was Maxon first, and then Ibanez just, branded. It's kind of like also a lot of the Ibanez guitars were actually made at Fujigen Gaki.
We referenced it like GMC and Chevy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So these companies are kind of intertwined, and kind of incestuous, and they, but Maxon, I'm sure was, basically the electronics arm of things, because really Ibanez was really more at the time was more involved with building guitars. Mm-hmm. So, but they were looking to expand and grow at the time, and was a very smart thing they did. I mean, that was just, the Japanese companies at the time were just very much, sadly, American companies were floundering under this kind of corporate bloat. And the Japanese were coming along and just, moving very quickly. Mm-hmm. And, just they were able to turn things around, and they were growing, by leaps and bounds. Mm-hmm. But that's, I guess the interesting thing is, of course, we had that kind of come to a head in the 80s. And then I think the Japanese companies kind of got, I can't say Roland so much, because Roland really thrived during the 80s, synth sales in particular. And they put out a lot of really good pedals during the 80s. But in general, though, we saw, especially the Ibanez pedals they went to these kind of really bad designs. They changed the overall design, and it wasn't quite as
frequently
robust. Yeah, and frequently. And it kind of really confused people. And then we had a lot of other weird companies that kind of came out. Some of the stuff was actually pretty good but you had like Vestafire, aka Vestax, which, is basically known for DJ gear, and stereo equipment in Japan. You had Pearl, doing stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just a crazy dark era. And then, of course, we get into the 90s. And that's, I think, where the whole, the boutique thing started to really explode in the United States. But it was happening in Japan, too, at the same time. And that's where I think a lot of the really interesting stuff just started to come up. And you had a lot of these guys who, cut their teeth at these companies, at your Rolands and your Korgs and your Ibanez / Maxon and whatever.
And Yamaha.
And Yamaha, exactly, and Yamaha. And they all branched, not all of them, but, a lot of these guys came from there. A lot of them just came up on their own, branched off and started doing their own thing. They had their own idea and a way to do it better.
Well, let me ask you really quick. I mean, Boss really never changed their form ever, right? I mean,
think they needed to. I don't think they wanted to. I don't think they really needed to. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like, why? How are you going to modify the wheel?
Yeah, exactly. But ironically, every single one of their competitors, it's not that they said, "Hey, here's a new sound." They just were changing the boxes. I mean, Maxon went through, I don't know what, 5, at least 5 major form designs.
Yeah.
And, following suit, everybody else was doing that too.
Except for Boss.
Except for Boss, it's weird. And I think, at least for me, one of the reasons that I do gravitate towards some of those old weird pedals is because they are weird.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, that's really nifty. They just completely did this thing over here. And all right, that's kind of neato. For some reason now that is somewhat alluring. I don't know at the time how I would have felt, because I didn't have any money to buy pedals, so but how did that, you went through that. Can talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think, the Boss pedal thing was it was like a big revolution for everybody, because here's these things that were just rock solid. They were dependable, and they weren't that expensive. They were a little expensive, but not outrageously so. And that to me was just like, and the color scheme, and that was the other thing. It was like when you're on stage, it was, unless you had really dark lights, whatever, it was pretty easy to tell which one was which.
And it looked cool.
And it looked cool, and you could line them up and have all these different colors, and it was just, and of course they came out with that little lunchbox thing, and you could have a pedal board, and so it was just a great, cohesive design. You could usually count on the quality. Back then we weren't quite as picky as we are now about, if it distorts. I have to say that MXR was doing a great job. That was the other thing. But that MXR stuff was kind of expensive. That was kind of like, oh, that's, for a lot of us, that was out of our price range. That was kind of the aspirational product, was to get the MXR pedals to a certain extent. And, I think part of it too is that MXR kind of, they came out with new stuff, but man, when Boss took off, it was just like it was something new every year. Right. It was kind of like, hey, it's Christmas again, and what Santa brought for us, Santa Kakahashi, and
a lot of stuff that's like, why do we need this?
Yeah, well, like the slow gear pedal. That's the thing. And again, here we're getting stuff that we didn't even know we needed, but we wanted it, and the slow gear. That was like kind of a weird sort of attempt at doing sort of a backwards sound. And they had a vibrato pedal, which is really cool. I have one of those, and it's absolutely great. It just sounds trippy, it's wonderful.
I imagine that for a lot of maybe more active /touring /pro artists that were still using pedals and maybe not yet getting into like rack gear yet, that being able, like, it'd be the difference between saying, I can get these pretty much anywhere, and I know everyone is going to sound exactly the same. If I break it, I put a new one on, I won't know the difference, as opposed to some of the other options out there that could very well have quite a few variables in them, especially like the old electro-harmonic stuff.
I was going to say that's electro-harmonics was just like, my gosh, what week is it? Because it's like they just, I can remember that. I can remember some of my friends would have stuff, and like one guy had a electric mistress, and another guy had another electric mistress, and they didn't sound the same. And like one guy sounded better than the other. And it's like, and you didn't have the time to go down to whatever store and, try out a bunch of different ones, or, a lot of times they were in the same shipment. So they all sounded pretty close, but you didn't have the, people with the patience to let you go through a bunch of pedals. Like you want electric mistress, they'd slap it up and here, take it, give us your money and get out of here. But yeah, that's, the thing was very consistent. I think that was the thing. You kind of got this MXR quality, and this robustness, but it wasn't quite as expensive as that stuff. And again, they had a lot more interesting stuff. MXR stuff's great, but it was kind of sober. It was kind of very.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Boring is a harsh way to put it, but
yeah, it wasn't really boring because it's good. It was very, it's
functional,
meat and potatoes, functional. Yeah.
So since while we're in the way back, for someone that that only knows the surface level of that scene, we talked about some of the real major players. Were there minor players that still really haven't gotten their due or are highly collectible, in your opinion?
As far as Japanese pedals from back then?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. Some of it was stuff that didn't really make it over here, but now you can find, again, like some of those older Maxon pedals, for example. That's you didn't really see those over here. Even a lot of the Ibanez pedals you didn't really see for a long time. They might have been here in dribs and drabs and stuff like that. But, like everybody knows, pretty much about like the Flying Pan or something like that, which they reissued here a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago now, I guess. But some of those big format pedals, those weren't so common around here at the time. They were probably like the bigger cities, like LA and in New York and that. And, but, kind of out in the sticks, you weren't kind of finding much in the way of Ibanez stuff. back in like the early 70s, not early, but mid 70s. Later in the 70s, that stuff started to show up a little bit more often. But well, I'm trying to think what else.
Well, while you're thinking, maybe I can ask another question that maybe prompts some of this. At the same time, you've got a lot, like, it seems like the Japanese didn't really kind of target the entire like fuzz industry or the fuzz world to the degree that like you had like color sound and like all the different tone benders and a lot of the British stuff, right? So you had all the British stuff happening, Dallas Arbiter and all that business.
They did initially, actually. That's the thing is like you look at Ace Tone, for example. They had three different, they kind of progressed through them, of course. It was like one replaced the other because you had the Fuzzmaster 1, followed by the Fuzzmaster 2, followed shortly thereafter by the Fuzzmaster 3,
Yeah.
And then that kind of morphed into, after Mr. Kakahashi got out of Ace Tone and started up Roland, that became the Bebop, essentially. You can kind of see a line in that. In fact, when I got my first Ace Tone FM2, probably sometime in the mid 90s, I just could see a direct line between that and the Bebop. You see the same type of switches, foot switches on it, and some of the same components and everything, and the construction is rather similar. It's better on the Roland box, but it's very much the controls on the front and everything. It's this wedge shape with the controls on the front, and the same type of knobs and everything.
Right.
So there was kind of that progression, but yeah, I think it kind of obviously, as we got out of the 60s, things moved away from fuzz, and the interest became more towards overdrive and distortion.
Actually, can I talk to you about the form again really quick? Because it's like when you're looking at rock sediment or something, right? And you're like, hey, this is where the Grand Canyon is, and all of a sudden there's like this huge split, and then that's like, why are these striations in a completely different place? So before, if we think about where that striation is, you like the color sounds and all of the huge format, the long fuzz pedals that everybody's kind of going back to now, or the wedge shapes, they were doing these big crazy ones, and then here comes like Boss and MXR with like the little tiny guys.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on like anything about that as far as like what drove any of that?
I think that MXR probably drove that, and I don't know. I haven't talked with the guys about that particular subject, but I imagine it was just driven by they used like the Bud box, and it was just something that was convenient, as much as anything. Like, hey, we can make this thing; it's going to fit in here. I don't know if there was this innate desire to make it that much smaller. Back then it used to be like, bigger is better and better value and, that kind of thing. And, but I think there was a certain group of players out there that didn't want their stage all cluttered with this, metropolis in front of them.
Right.
So I think that was part of it too. But, as far as I can recall, I think, the MXR was among the first to go with this compact format, very, very simplified. Of course, a lot of these big things only had like one knob on them. Some of them would be a big, huge wedge, and again, like be like one knob on it. You know, so and then there's all this space inside. That was the other thing. It was just like, why?
Right. It improves the tone considerably.
The resonance. It's got its own reverb chamber in it.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, thanks for letting me butt in there really quick. I think one of the interesting things that I know I'm sitting here ready to take notes, and I'm like, okay, you go check up on Ace Tone, and when we're talking about some of those, were there any brands that were sort of like on the verge or eking out that maybe we haven't really heard of or haven't gotten their due back then?
There's some things like you'll see, and some of them rightfully didn't do so well because they were kind of like, there was a lot of hit and miss with them, but like Chenet, for example, is a brand that has some good stuff and has some stuff that's, it's all right.
And that for anybody that isn't familiar, that's Shin-E.
Yeah. And it's, I'm not one to really dog on too many pedals because somebody out there can do something great with it, I mean, it's there's a use for everything. I find there's no such thing as a useless pedal. I mean, I was just thinking this afternoon out walking the dog about, oh gosh, I think it was an Aryan pedal or something like that one of these Swedish death metal bands used. It's like it was like a $25 pedal back in the day, and they just took this. It was like this plastic pedal that a metal music pedal,
right?
And turned every knob all the way up on it, to make this screeching overdrive distortion madness, and recorded an album with it. And so, hey, God bless them, man. They figured out a use for that thing,
Well, speaking of useless pedals, one of my favorite useless pedals is also by Shanae. It's the Companion. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh, yeah.
So it's a combination. You can use it as a volume pedal, wah pedal, a surf sound pedal.
Yep.
The sound of the surf. And most importantly, the siren.
Yep. Got to have the siren, man.
Yeah.
How else are you going to play your Sweet covers?
That's that's true. I never thought about that, but yeah, there's that, I guess that would be perfect for it. Maybe they even use that particular pedal. Who knows?
I somehow think they might have. Actually, I'm not 100% certain, but they may very well have. Who knows?
I need to make a correction on myself. It is dash
EI.
EI. I forgot the I
yeah.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Also, Tony, now that companion pedal with the siren, you can totally use that if you play the theme song to Bad Boys.
Yes.
Or so Hawaii. At least there's one good known use for that pedal.
Yeah.
Also Hawaii 5-0.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's not a useless pedal after all.
No.
Two uses.
Two uses.
But trying to think of other brands. I mean, I should have made a list of. I was thinking more now than old, and I know in the back of my brain there's a lot more stuff out there, but that's just right off the top of my head. I mean, there were a lot of brands out there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just all the big Japanese corporations, and some of these companies were actually big Japanese corporations in Japan. They just didn't make as much of an impact over here in the States.
Yeah. Well, and that's how you can stumble on those every once in a while. You're like, what is this? If you're looking in the right places. So get out there and look, everybody.
Especially garage sales with old folks, because a lot of guys, again, surf bands, hey, it had the surf sound on it, so, hey, wow, we can do, Sloop John B or whatever. And start it off with a nice, wash of white noise.
Let's find out. So get us into the future a little bit. You started to dip into the 90s a little bit. What was happening then?
90s, you start to get the breakout. You start to get a lot of these smaller guys coming to the fore. For me, like the company that kind of opened my eyes up was Bright Sound International. And they made this pedal called the Big Sonic Expandora. And it was a tuna can. It was basically like a tiny fuzz face.
Yeah.
And it was like a little silver, aluminum can, round shape. It looked like a tuna can, basically, with three knobs and a line along the front. The Big Sonic pedal, it was fun. It was cool. Actually, the guy who distributed here in the U.S. was a guy who was down in Chattanooga, a guy named Bruce Barr, unfortunately, who ended up in an automobile accident and getting killed very sadly here around about 20 years ago. And he actually handed over the reins basically to Godlike, who distributed it. And of course, Godlike brought in a bunch of really cool Japanese stuff. At the time, they scouted out a lot of these smaller companies and some of even the bigger stuff, Guillotone, and that sort of thing. But one of my favorite stories about that pedal is the instructions. I'll have to send you guys a picture because I dug up my box and got the instructions out, and they had this cartoon, and it was kind of like they had two dip switches inside, and you have 4 different possible settings with 2 dip switches, right? And so they show, okay, here's like an overdrive, here's a distortion, here's fuzz, and then both down is like, no, like exclamation point, 5 exclamation points, frowny face, clouds, thunder, and everything like that. And I saw that. And of course, my first thing is like, oh, let me try
That's the one I want.
And of course you do that. And it's the most outrageously overdriven to the point where the sound just spits and cuts, and it's unpredictable and it's super fuzzy. And I wrote in my review of it for Guitar World, I called it the forbidden setting. And that stuck, and that's, now it's officially known as the forbidden setting. But it was just like, I saw it. In fact, I think I talked it over with Bruce before I turned it, told him about the review, and it says like, oh yeah, I tried it at the, with the forbidden setting. It's like, what's that? And he's like, oh, both offsetting, they tell you not to do it. It's like, oh, I love that, and we both agreed that it was a good thing to go with it.
Now, while you're talking about the Expandora, now that changed hands, I think you at least twice, but maybe 3 times. Is that correct?
I don't know. I saw just recently that somebody's doing it again here in the United States. I know that there was 3 different iterations of that pedal, and I couldn't figure out the whole Bright Sound International story. I remember I went over to Japan, I think it was in 96, my very first time I went to Tokyo, actually, which is great. And I met up with those guys because I knew them, through Bruce. Mm-hmm. And they took me around Tokyo, and I wouldn't have gotten around there. There was no, smartphones and Google Maps and any of that stuff. Because I wanted to buy a Greco Les Paul, and they said, we know where to go, and they took me out to a bunch of shops out there in Shibuya and Shinjuku and all around that area where there's a billion guitar shops. And of course, they gave me another pedal and everything. And I was there with Mr. Big. So I gave Paul Gilbert one, and I gave Billy Sheehan one through them, courtesy of them. But I remember it was like these 2 guys, and I wish I could remember their names now. But I don't remember the company being much more than the 2 of them, so it was very much a boutique type of operation.
And this was pre-Big Sonic.
That was Big Sonic. That was Bright Sound International. So that, they did produce, I don't know why they called it the Big Sonic when the company was Bright Sound, but I guess it was just, they had the name of the company, and this was the pedal name, and I don't even know if Big Sonic was even a company because they didn't have any other products that I knew of. Like I said, there was 2 different iterations. They finally put the dip switches outside of the pedal because a bunch of people were complaining about wanting to get in there, and it's typical. I mean, that's one thing I love about Japanese pedals is, man, you got to look under the hood.
Yeah.
Because there's hidden wonderful secrets in a lot of these things. And I just discovered in one of my pedals today, there was like a couple controls I never even knew, like full-on knobs. Because I never bothered, because it doesn't run on batteries or anything like that. So I've always used a power supply, and it's never had a reason to look inside, And today I just thought, I'm going to take a look inside this thing. Like, what do you know? There's like a couple like preset volume knobs in here.
That's cool.
Amazing, but...
Well, and you just touched on something that is part of the excitement whenever you go like, I'm into something new. I've got a new rabbit hole to explore. Knowing the ins and outs and the whys of those purchases, which we'll get into, is a big thing. Speaking of the Big Sonic and the Expandora, you're going to see big changes of big variances in price, and just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's what you think it might. So it's just we will get into that later. Sorry, but you just touched on a very important factor. I just don't want people to start clicking, going like, I'm gonna buy it. Wait till the show's over.
I mean, the great thing about the Expandora, of course, a lot of people know about Billy Gibbons using it, and he had back on ZZ Top's tour that year, he had 6 of them. He had this little African kind of like, it was like I don't even know what it was, like a stuffed armadillo kind of thing. Like it was kind of this armadillo head god sculpture thing with like 6 of these things lined up. And of course it wasn't plugged in, but Billy always has his mythology. So of course, that's the secret of my sound. I go through 6 of these, and I remember this is the greatest thing of that experience because I was helping Bruce out was Super Bowl Sunday, and ZZ Top played the Super Bowl that year.
Wow.
And I was on the phone with Billy, before he's going to go play the Super Bowl before millions of people. And we're talking about how to get attention for this dang little pedal. And him and Dusty wore them on their guitar straps,
kidding.
And so to give this thing exposure, to millions of people. And it was just like, how do we, I I sent out these press releases and nobody picked up on it because it's like, it's Super Bowl, whatever. All they cared about was like, oh, the Budweiser ad or whatever.
Yeah.
But I tried to promote. It's like, what the heck was that thing on their on their guitar straps, that silver box, and mentioned it was an Expandora pedal, but it was too geeky, I think, for the general media.
Let me ask you, I don't want to spend too much time on Expandora, but
sure.
That coming out roughly about the same time as Rat was hitting. Am I about right there?
Rat was a bit earlier than that, actually. So yeah, Rat was actually, I think, quite earlier. I mean, Rat was around in the 80s and everything, but
so when did the Expandora came out? You said in
90s, probably about 94, maybe.
I was thinking it was way earlier. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
But that was, again, the whole boutique thing, because gotcha. Again, this was a like I said, as far as I know, Bright Sound International was two guys.
Got it.
And not much more than that. And that was kind of, that was my entry way into the whole Japanese boutique world. And then from there, it was like,
right,
leave the bank account behind,
So out of the 90s, now we are starting to get into, we're starting to see like lots and lots of multi-effects and everything. And how did that kind of affect the, I guess, pedals, the standalone pedals? Did it affect the standalone pedals? Can we talk about all of that a little bit?
Well, I think what happened, of course, was, we had grunge and we had Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, and man, there was just so much interest in stomp boxes again. That was, the stomp box renaissance basically began, the early 90s, and it was like, again, this whole, we went through the whole glam metal thing and the refrigerator racks, of gear and Bradshaw racks. And
even if you were playing a club, this is my rack system.
Yeah, you're playing a club, and it's, and
I got to share this just really quick because I had this is so embarrassing, but I'm going to say it anyways. When I first started out, I had a PV, I think it was a Special 130.
Right.
And, I'm like, well, you read the magazines, you see who's endorsing what. Back then when that mattered, that's what sold stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For
some reason, I had it in my head as, like I remember going into a music store and they had for sale a Chandler tube driver racks.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
And I bought it, and I set it on top of my PV 130, and that was my rig.
Hey, I'll do one up. I mean, it's actually a great rig, but talk about dichotomy. Because in the 80s, I played in rockabilly bands in Los Angeles and Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
And I had a wonderful, I still have it, one of the best sounding amps in the world, 57 Deluxe Fender. That was my gigging amp. And I had a Roland SRV 2000, right? Reverb. And I used to go into the reverb. And later on, I actually had a Sans amp that I used as a boost. So...
Wow.
Get that, a Sans amp with an SRV 2000 into a Tweed Deluxe.
We both were doing silly things.
It was the 80s/90s, it was dark ages, man.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, I cut you off when you were just about to talk about all that stuff. Go ahead.
Oh, well, but the switch happened. I mean, obviously the refrigerator rack, it's great in the studio, but I can remember so many times, like, perfect example of that was like seeing Lukather and Carlton at NAMM. And Lukather had his big Bradshaw rack, and Carlton at that point was just, I think, going, whatever, probably his Valley Arts guitar into a Dumble or something. And who could you hear all night? Larry. He couldn't hear a single note that Lukather played, But I think people loved that simplicity, and it was cheap, and Kurt Cobain brought a lot of that stuff back, and the Grunge Acts, Soundgarden, you name it. There's just this whole appreciation, Mudhoney, the Super Fuzz Big Muff album. I mean, come on, that's an ad right there, So, and you could get that stuff cheap. That's really when my pedal collecting just went through the roof because, the vintage guitar market had taken off. Amps were getting stupid. Guitars were getting stupid. Pedals were still cheap. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad I stocked up on, and spent all my extra money on pedals back in those days because all that stuff has just gone through the roof.
Yeah.
But I remember we did a pedal special when I was at Guitar Player magazine at the time. And actually a bunch of my pedals are in that issue, or stuff that I ended up buying after that was at the local, used music store that we borrowed half of the stuff from. But on the Japanese side of things, though, again, they started, all these guys started branching off from the big companies, or they just had, skill with electronics and they loved music and they wanted to participate. And so they started cranking out these pedals. Not so many made it over here. It's still at that point was a lot of the bigger companies, as I mentioned, Godlike, was one of the channels for bringing over some of the lesser known things or the harder to get stuff. I know Kevin started bringing over the Gaiatone pedals, for example. He started bringing over the Maxon brand pedals, and that sort of thing. So that kind of helped build the awareness here in the United States, made stuff more easily available. But still to this day, fortunately now we've got great mail order, and thank God they've worked out the shipping over in Japan, because there was a nightmare period there for about 5 months where it was just impossible to get anything shipped over from Japan. But now it's like you can get stuff shipped over pretty quickly. So obviously your visual outlets, your reverbs and stuff like that. There's actually a bunch of Japanese retailers there now that you can get stuff a lot more easily. But I still love, and unfortunately, again, they're still shut down to tourists, so you can't go over to Japan. But I think the best thing is just to go over there if you can. And gosh, now would be the perfect time because the dollar is so much stronger against the yen, which is also just a good time to even, to buy over here and have it shipped over, because that will definitely lessen the cost, quite a bit due to the favorable exchange rate versus the dollar. But, that's the thing was like, you can find about the internet also, made this stuff a lot more available to people. You could see stuff. Of course, we didn't have, again, to translate like Google Translate and that sort of thing. So it's like you'd see these pictures of things. I got a lot of these Japanese guitar magazines and you just see these brands over there. And like, what the heck is that? And you just, sometimes just to take a blind dive into getting things, and just sometimes it'd be great and other times it'd be like, I kind of threw away my money. Oh, well,
Yeah. So let's talk about moving into, I guess, future times, or we are in the future.
Future time.
We are in the future. Let's talk about what's going on.
And I have to say, on behalf of Roland's 50th anniversary, there was their motto: "We designed the future."
Well, speaking of that, one of the things I'm most excited about is, well, I guess it's the Boss Space Echo reissue. Not a true reissue, but I'm trying to figure out what I can sell to buy one.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a worthy thing. They did a great job with that. I mean, I love tape echoes, but man, are they just, I spend about as much time now on my old gear. In fact, I'm just going this weekend to get some stuff repaired, but that's the next in line is my Space Echoes need to be, brought back up to snuff. They just, that stuff time does not do nice things to those.
No, if you don't use them, especially too for
you've got to all this stuff. And that's the problem with my collecting and having 500 pedals. Is you got to use this stuff, because it just I had a pedal I let sit, an Oberheim VCF pedal, and I went and plugged it in a couple of weeks ago, and it's not doing anything. It's like, what happened?
Oh man.
Did I not give you enough TLC? What's going on? Come back to life. Come back to me,
please.
Yeah. But I think there's just been an explosion, in the last 20 years in particular. I think in the late 90s in particular, we just saw this flood. One company in particular that I discovered a few years ago, Honda Soundworks. Fascinating guy. I don't know what his story is. He's got sort of a website, but it hasn't been updated since 2016.
Wow.
He was releasing some 17th anniversary pedals.
Oh wow.
I mean, I guess 17 must have some significance. I guess I don't know what, but I can guess. But I don't know why would you do a 17th anniversary run of anniversary pedals. But I went to this shop called Nico Guitars in Shibuya, and they had some they don't, at least at the time, they weren't carrying a lot of pedals, but what they had was choice, and I saw this gray box with just this, label maker type of, clear plastic, label maker labels, on it for it was like Master 1, Volume 2, and two switches, 2 LEDs. And the back of it was about wiped off. So it said, all I could see was Honda Soundworks, and the name of the pedal was actually kind of obscured. Fortunately, I took a picture, and they had a little card that said Fujiyama Drive, British. And great pedal. It's really one of the best Marshalls in a box out there. It's like a 2-channel Marshall in a box. And that's the pedal I was referring to earlier about the hidden controls. Again, I just was running this thing off of an adapter, power source, a 9-volt power source. Never used a battery in it. And I decided to just open it up and look inside and see kind of what's going on. And lo and behold, there's 2 extra knobs inside. And they were kind of like, I guess they were like volume, settings essentially, because it's like a 2-channel amp. So the idea was just like, okay, you set your rhythm volume and your lead volume here. But it was like, I had no idea that was hiding in there, but the guy's interesting. I mean, I cannot figure him out. Like I said, he hasn't updated his website in years, but his stuff trickles out there. It's now going for outrageously stupid prices, a lot of this stuff. But he has one pedal out there called the Spice.
Yeah, it's not even like a pedal.
You can't even. You can't even. You have to call it. I'd have to call it almost like, I don't want to say a hoax, but it's almost like voodoo, mojo. I don't know what you call it. It's basically a small MXR bud box enclosure. Input output jack, 1/4-inch input output jacks. That's it. There's no
controls or foot switch.
No controls, no switch. And then I was like, what the hell is this? It's like, what is this? There's no power jack, nothing. I'm like, what does this do? And I looked into it, and someone had a picture of the inside, and there's 2 wires. Just like basically 2 little 1 1/4-inch pieces of wire jumpering between the input and the output. It's basically like, I need an extra 1.25 inches out of my pedal, out of my chords, I guess, But I guess the story is that he got some old Neve console and stripped the wire out of it and cut pieces of it out and stuck it in this box.
Weird.
Now, why? I don't know.
Right.
What does it do? Who knows? Does it make any difference? I doubt it. I mean, because basically whatever you get, going on, it gets tempered by the cable going out of it, So
yeah.
And these things sell for like $200, $250.
Yeah. He's got a lot of different effects. I mean, if you feel like, throwing some money to the wind, boy, this is a good way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of different form functions, and you're not going to get the same pedal twice.
Yeah, the Fujiyama Drive is just awesome. Like I said, I have so many Marshalls in a box, and it's, if not the best, it's amongst the best. And at this point in time, it's my favorite Marshall in a box. And I've read up since. I think I saw something that I think John Spencer, as well as Schudebauer, the John Spencer Blues Explosion, have used the guy's pedals, including the Fujiyama Drive. And I think I heard something like Judah used it just because they'd go over to Europe or whatever and rent amps, and this was kind of like their way to make sure that they got their sound. On any generic rented amp out there. But I don't, again, that was kind of I saw that on some forum somewhere, but there's not much information about Honda Soundworks out there. It's kind of the mystery. And like I said, it's just like the stuff's out there, and a lot of his stuff is in just, it's going for $800 to $1,000 for some of those pedals, especially the Fujiyama Drive. Now I got mine for, I'm not going to say what I got it for, but I got it for a heck of a lot less than that. And I'm sure if you go to, I don't know how many thousands of shops there are in Japan proper, in Tokyo. I think there's about anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 music stores, guitar stores. Yeah, it's outrageous. They're everywhere, and especially as you get out into the outer the outer reaches, or you get up into, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank now on the area up there where ESP actually has its factory. It's kind of like the joke. It's kind of like the New Jersey of Tokyo, basically. But up in some of those other areas, you might find stuff where they're not, going for such a heavy price or whatever. But there are bargains out there to be found. I mean, that's, again, I wish I could go, because it's just like you just kind of got to get out there in the trenches and everything. And that's really the best way to experience. Not everyone can, obviously. It's expensive and it adds, to whatever. But of course, you get a vacation and great food to go with it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Well, these Honda ones are starting it for the most part. You can guarantee you're going to give away at least $400.
Yeah, and that's
on the low end of things.
I think it's because the guy just is kind of vanished. I mean, I don't know. He must be out there, but I think I saw something. He was at one of the AMP shows here a few years ago, like in Nashville or something like that, and there was like kind of this really cheap kind of tin can version thing, like held together with rubber bands. Somebody called it the Fujiyama drive, but it doesn't really have. It only has one foot switch, not two. And
it almost looks like one of the like a bellhop bell.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's $500.
That's $500 now. Wow. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, a couple of years ago that was like $150.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of the other major players out there. I think most people, well, I'm not going to say most people, because that's just a big fat assumption. One of the biggest players who's definitely commanding high dollar stuff is Shin's Music.
Yeah, Shin's Music. That's, man, he's the man.
Yeah, whom I was in conversation with to come on the show, and then COVID hit, and then his shop assistant guy was like, "Well, I don't know how we're going to be able to do this," and so I'll have to hit him up again. But please continue.
But yeah, he's the man when it comes to just, again, talk about the amp and the boxing. He's really perfected that. I mean, he does dumbbells in a box. He does Mesa Boogies in a box. He does Marshalls in a box. Great overdrive pedals. Of course, most of us over here, there was a limited run a while back, the Shinjuku drive by MXR. And that's the Shin of Shin's Music. That was, that was a project he was involved in. That was kind of his Dumble-ish interpretation. That's one thing a lot of the Japanese guys do. You see quite a bit of like Dumble emulators out there. I don't know if that's maybe because probably 99.9% of guitarists out there have never played through a Dumble. But so hey, it sounds like a Dumble. Oh, well, of course it sounds like a Dumble. Have you heard one? No, but it's got to sound like a Dumble.
Right.
It says it sounds like a Dumble, but no, I think over there they actually do get their hands on this stuff, and it's if you're going to find a Dumble, it's going to be in some vintage shop in Tokyo somewhere, or Osaka or wherever, know. But Shin is just again, great work, and of course, pedals for the stars. It goes on and on with all the guys who use his stuff.
Sure. Well, it's unassuming too. I mean, for someone who maybe not as familiar with some of the stuff, when you look at the sea of incredible silkscreen graphics and just the production level that even some of the smallest DIY people can put together, and then you look at Shin's Music and it's literally, Tony, I can't remember what the
it's like the embossed label maker.
The one that the click and then you.
Dymo.
Yeah.
Dymo. Yeah.
Dymo. Yeah, exactly. Dymo label
I mean,
maker.
you're looking at that, and I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, "What the hell? I haven't seen one of those labels in 30 years.
Yeah.
Why is this pedal $600-$700?
Because he had to buy them all.
Right.
All of the Dymo
label makers.
Because if you mix up the letters of Dymo, somehow encoded spells Mojo.
Yes. So that's just one of those weird things, and there's a handful of builders out there that I think Reeves is verging on that too. Reeves and Analog Man and it's like those three are kind of in the same echelon of build it, and before you say these are available, they're gone. And it doesn't matter what they can charge, whatever.
Yeah, no, it's It's one of those things. I mean, it's again, it's like the Klon Centaur and that sort of thing. It's just if you know it and you've used it, you want it. They're good. They're really good.
Yeah.
But it is kind of crazy. I mean, it's like like the Mark I Overdrive is basically a Mesa Boogie Mark I in a box, and it's really cool. I've seen them in wood or snake skin. I mean, it's so funny because that's like you look at that and it's like it's
Purple
totally deluxe
velvet and all kinds of stuff.
It's totally deluxe looking compared to the crude Dymo label maker pedals that he has. But you can almost get a Mark I for the price of one of those pedals. It's just, I mean, how far do you want to go?
Yeah. There's a handful of others that are kind of kicking around there as well. I know one that I found was Katana Sound, and I have never played one. I don't know squat about it, but I know that there are a bunch of these pedals where this guy basically said, I'm taking the best of the West and the best of the East in Japan and putting them together, and this is what I got.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, again, Katana Sounds is another guy who's kind of under the radar, so to speak. That's one of those, his stuff doesn't really make it over here. I guess imagine it's a he. I don't know who's really behind it. I'm sure it's a he, but there are stores, that you can go to in Japan. The Ochanomizu district, for example, that's you got to go there. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just wall-to-wall guitar shops. It's like about 2.5, 3 blocks of guitar shops. And it's like you have the main drag there in Ochanomizu. And then you have off on the side streets, there's a bunch of little shops too. There's a store like right when you get out of the main, there's a train or subway station, and right at the big corner there, it's called the Big Boss store. It's actually owned by ESP Guitars. ESP owns actually, I think, about 4 or 5 shops just in that area.
Wow.
Actually, upstairs, right in the building right next to that, they have a guitar building school. And I actually went to visit there once. I was invited by ESP over there, and it was wonderful. There's like about 50 young people there, male and female, building guitars. And a lot of these people are going to go to work, for not just ESP, but for the other Japanese guitar companies too. And it was kind of like this apprenticeship program. And it was really cool because they also really stressed creativity. And it was like design your own guitar and build it. And these guys were, one guy was building, some crazy acoustic guitar, and the others were doing solid bodies, and another guy was doing jazz guitars, and another guy was doing like a extended range, multi-range, type of 10-string instrument. But getting back to the Big Boss store, that's like first place to go. I recommend if you go to Ochanomizu, go make a beeline, go to the Big Boss store. There on the ground floor, they have you're just overwhelmed with this display. If you go into the right part of the store, because it can get confusing. There's multi-floors and everything too. That's the other thing. It's not just, a little storefront, but a lot of these places have like 5, 6, 8 floors. But on the ground floor there at Big Boss, off of the main drag, when you go in, they just have, it's like a rainbow. It's just all these pedals, and it's like tons of stuff you've never seen before, at least if you're a Westerner going over there.
Amazing.
And you can plug in and you can play them. You can spend all day, and they don't mind. I mean, they probably do mind. I mean, I'm sure there's, to a certain point, they don't mind, but they're very cool there about it. I mean, there's another big shop. There's Ishibashi. They've got a couple storefronts there. It depends on the guy you get. Some people are really cool. Other people are kind of like, they're a little standoffish. It's almost like a Guitar Center type of deal at Ishibashi.
Right.
But the Big Boss store is just really cool. And then of course there's all these other shops you can pop in and look, and there's used stuff, especially if you're looking for used Boss or Max.
Can you bring stuff over there?
Yeah, you can bring stuff over, especially if you want to bring stuff to trade or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. In fact, it's highly encouraged.
That's encouraging because I'm encouraged to go there.
Say if you're going to do that, well, it depends on what you want. Of course, you have to go to a store that sells used stuff. I don't know if Big Boss does used stuff. I don't recall them selling anything used. I think they're all pretty much new product. But there's plenty of stores there in Ochanomizu. But over in Shinjuku, over in this area, I wish I should have written all this stuff down, but it's like the Koreatown area of Shinjuku, and it's like right around the corner. There's like a overground train, and the train and the subway is kind of interchangeable. They all you have overground or the underground, and you can ride around for cheap. You buy what they call a Suica card, and it's just it's put some money on there, and it's just whatever they figure out your fare, and go. But you go basically, you get off the station, you go down and around the corner, and there's this little tiny street. And it's packed with all these great stores. And one of my favorite stores, and this is a big seller on Reverb now, called TC Gaki. And TC Gaki is Japan guitar and effect pedal heaven. They are a bunch of guys, again, who came out of a lot of them came out of ESP Guitar or Ibanez, and they work there now. And they're very proud of, they love it when a foreigner comes over and shows interest in buying a Japanese guitar. I've bought many Japanese guitars from them when I've been over there, and I've bought many stuff through mail order from them. But they have really gotten into the pedal thing big time now. And I just looked today at their listings, and they're not all Japanese pedals. They're mixed. They're from all over the world. That's what's so amazing. I saw stuff from France and from Norway and even Russia. Not that you want to buy a Russian pedal right now, but
it's called TC Gaki.
TC Gaki, Gakki, and they had 27 pages of pedals. It's like 27 times, I don't know what, probably about, I think there was 24 per page or 40 per page or something like that. And just a good probably 50% of that stuff's Japanese pedals, and they have great stuff, and it's a great store to go to. They're very cool there. So their English isn't the best. It can be a little bit of a challenge, but you just point and whatever, and they figure it out.
Gotcha. Well, that's very helpful for anybody that might be considering doing so. I think now that we're all excited about this stuff, and we're all probably going to Reverb and eBay and Craigslist and everything right now. Not that we're doing that at all currently.
I think I'll give you guys a quick list hit, and I can't say I've tried some of these things I have tried, some of these things I do own, and some of these things just look fascinating to me. I'll say Weed is one thing. Weed, I'd kind of say, is probably the Japanese equivalent of Keeley, perhaps, maybe not as many pedals as they put out. Again, Weed is another company. I don't really know what the hell their deal is.
It's just Weed, like spelled like weed?
Weed, like W-E-E-D.
Right.
And I don't know whether it refers to weed, the type you smoke or whatever, but it's today it was actually funny because I was, again, getting ready for this.
I
have a Sweet Sound drive, and I had the red one, the red Sweet Sound drive. They do like a Sweet Sound green, which is more of an overdrive and maybe less distorted. But I'm wondering if the Weed is actually a shortening of Tweed, because the tone control on it, and I was just doing a deep dive on my 57 Deluxe here the other day. It's like the tone control on my 57 Deluxe, where it's not just a tone control, but it also does other stuff, where it increases the gain as well, and it interacts with the volume, the gain and the volume controls in a very interesting way. I love that. I record with that a lot because it just does one of the most beautiful singing, violin-like lead tones.
Interesting.
It's those you can, if you shop around, you can get them pretty cheap, or you can pay a hell of a lot too much for them.
Yeah, a couple of $100 it looks like.
I mean, you should be able to, if you look around, sometimes you can find them for 150, 175, and if you can find someone greedy, he's going to sell it to you for 350 or 400. So that's kind of the challenge with a lot of this stuff, is the prices can vary quite a bit.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I think that'll be a good way to sort of send us off into going to explore on our own. What are some of the things that drive the cost of, whether they're new pedals, that some of the ones we've been mentioning, or maybe more importantly, if you're going to dip your toe into something that is not totally unfamiliar, but you're like, I've heard of Ibanez and now Maxon, or you're familiar with Maxon, or even an old Boss pedal. What are some of the things to consider when purchasing?
Well, first of all,
that was a big breath.
Yeah, I'd say if you can, and it can be very difficult with a lot of these things because they're not always like YouTube examples, and of course, it's sometimes frustrating to go through because you may find somebody whose playing style is close to yours, and you may find a guy who's sitting there and strumming lightly, barely clean, like barely up, cowboy chords,
Yeah.
So it can be really frustrating. But boy, it is. I'd say TC Gaki is actually a very good place to go because they have probably the best descriptions out there. They can be very funny. There was one I was looking at today. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, here it is. It's for the Soul Power Instruments Afterglow, and it says the design with a glossy woman is also good. Good all caps. Because it has a like a trucker kind of woman, like a mud flap woman kind of thing on
right.
it, on there of this woman in kind of flames or whatever. But she's glossy, I guess. So in the afterglow, but
obviously good.
Obviously good, but some of their descriptions they have more descriptions. A lot of times you go to these things and there's no description. That's what's frustrating. It's like, what is it? Sometimes the controls aren't even labeled. It can be very frustrating. What are you getting? Part of it. If you can't go and play these things, if you can't find a video online, and if it's not too expensive, I say just get your feet wet. You may discover something really cool. If not, flip it.
Yeah.
That's just part of the fun. Again, it shouldn't be too expensive. I mean, I was just looking today at there's a company called Goat, and most of their pedals are dirt cheap. They're like $55, and if you like a Japanese baseball team, you can get a pedal in the graphics of your favorite Japanese baseball team for 5,500 yen. Hey, great. Actually less than that because the exchange rate is probably more like about 47, or 46 yen. But they also do something called a generator, which is basically those old Scholl's distortion generator, whatever he called it, the little kind of half rack mount. Tom Scholl's devices, the
Rockman series.
Yeah, it's basically a repro of the Rockman, So if you want a Rockman, you want that kind of that studio Rockman, not the little, the practice amp one, but the little kind of rack mountable one. He does that in a pedal format. And it's about $300 and some bucks. And it's I'm fascinated by that. I think that, it's time to bring back the Rockman sound, in all its compressed glory.
Yes. So I had a question concerning Boss. A lot of times if and this plays into what we're talking about here, looking for things on Reverb or whatever. A lot of times you see Boss pedals, and if they're Japanese made, they're twice or more as much as the Taiwanese made ones. Is there really that much difference between the Japanese and the Taiwanese ones?
No, it's, there's some difference, but it's like as you get on through time. But, a late Japanese and an early Taiwanese, there's not going to be hardly any difference at all. Their quality control and their standards are pretty damn high over there. But, that's the thing with the pedal thing is, and it's frustrating because a lot of times people see a cosmetic change on the box and they think that somehow the inside's changed too. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can be like electroharmonics and you can have $5 that look identical and they're all completely different inside. But, in general, that kind of I would, I wouldn't sweat it too much. Maybe if it's an old OD1, there might be some differences, and if you're that particular about it. But, we can all get so particular about stuff. And when you're playing out there for an audience or you're recording, if you're in the recording studio, half the time you're carving away a bunch of that stuff anyways.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the mixing process and everything, so.
Well, I think that one of the interesting things about these, especially the older pedals, is that, look, a lot of us don't have... I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford a vintage guitar. And by vintage, I mean
sure,
pre 70s even.
Yeah.
that's just not in my wheelhouse.
I'll leave
I've
you
got
one
3
in my
kids.
will.
Thank you. You should leave me more than one. But I'm going to take your generosity and double it. But this is a way to get into something that you are excited about, that you have interest in, that is, slightly unobtainable. But, that's kind of what got me excited about. Like, I was just looking for a flange, and then I stumbled on this thing, and I was like, I saw a demo of this Maxon flanger. I was like, man, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
And then I went looking for one, and I said, well, I could get a reissue, or I could get this one right over here that's, coming from Japan, never left Japan, and is early 80s. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And that was just sort of an extra neato factor.
Oh, it is.
Does it sound different? Probably not, but it's just collectible, and it made me feel good about that.
That's the key to it. I mean, it's funny because you mentioned that, because it's like, I can remember, like, I bought, years ago, I bought an Ibanez FL9, the yellow flanger, and I found it in a Russian pawn shop in Manhattan, down in the Lower East Side somewhere, for like $20, and it's just like, yeah, it's $20. Geez. I'll just take it. I don't care if it even works. I can use the box for a project or something for $20.
You didn't haggle with them? Come on.
Actually, I probably did haggle with them, but I think it was probably $25 and I got it for 20 or whatever.
Yeah,
I had to go somewhere. So, but I got the reissue here a few years ago and put them side by side and did my own little blind taste test. And I really couldn't hear any difference. There wasn't that much difference. Now, with other pedals, sure, it does happen from time to time. I can say, the Roland Jet Phaser, there's that one that came out just recently. Yeah, they're expensive. I mean, that's the thing. I'm kicking myself because I didn't buy one back in the day, because even back when I started collecting pedals, the Jet Phaser still was just expensive. Back then it was probably $175 or $200 or something like that. But it was just like, I'll just wait till I find a cheap one. Well, I never found a cheap one. So but some of the reason that goes into it, we were talking about earlier, the form of it is unique. Yeah, but the sound is too, because the thing is, I finally splurged, and I now have 2. Just within the last 6 months after I wrote the book, after I wrote the Vitti and Van Halen book, the Eruption book, I decided to reward myself. I said, I'm going to buy that Jet Phaser, damn it. So I said, screw it. I'm going out there. I'm buying one. I got one that was kind of beat up or whatever, but they had that one that came out. It was $150. I wish I could remember the name. I was like, but it was like a reissue, and it's like, hey, it sounds pretty good. But then I found this, again, on the wonders of YouTube, these German guys, they had an original one, and they had the reissue one. And it's just like, man, the original one just sounds so organic and animalistic and just all the stuff that you want, you know? Yeah. The new one it kind of gets there, but it just doesn't have that extra crazy, growly musical je ne sais quoi, about it. So I bought one. And of course, after I bought that, a couple of weeks later, what turns up? One I've never seen before. It's in a black case. In the faceplate, instead of having the orange Roland lettering on it, it's in green. Oh. And it doesn't have the switch. There's like a on-off power switch. Like there's like, the level switch. It has like a on-off switch too. At 0, it turns it on. This didn't have that. And I'm like, what is this? And I bought it, and it sounds identical to the one I bought. And I looked inside the parts, and there's differences, but the chips are pretty close. They're actually within like a few months of each other from the date code and everything. And it's like, I just wonder if this was like an early version, and it somehow ended up in a store in New York City. Weird, That's part of the fun, That's I put off getting one for years, and now I have 2. So, and they'll probably go up in value. And I'm going to hype that black one up so I can pay for my kids' college education.
There you go.
Extra rare.
Extra rare black. It's got the extra black dark Jet Phaser sound.
Well, some of the other things that I think when we're talking about driving the cost or things, maybe not necessarily what are things that drive a cost, but can you give anybody any advice as to maybe what not to do or to watch out for?
Well, first of all, I hate to dispute an entire country, but there's copies out there, and certain countries you want to avoid. Like if you're buying on Reverb, I would say you're better off for the most part buying stuff from either U.S. dealers or Japanese dealers. If it comes from somewhere else, there's a chance it may not be what you think you're getting. It may be the box, but the inside may not be.
Gotcha.
And that's one thing too. I mean, definitely look around for pictures of guts, especially if you're looking for an older pedal or even a recent one. See if you can see what the insides look like. Mm-hmm. Because you can find people out there who are taking stuff and they're just, selling it as this and it's something else entirely inside. Mm-hmm. So definitely that's one thing to look out for. Especially if the price is too good to be true. If it just seems to be like completely underpriced on the thing, and especially if there's no pictures of the inside, or if you contact the seller and ask for a picture and they don't send it to you, then definitely be leery of it. You got to familiarize yourself with, if you can, with integrated circuit chip date codes are pretty easy to figure out. Just read some tutorials about that online, figure that out. That's one way. Figure out what the types of chips that were used. And some pedals, unfortunately, those chips can be really hard to get. So if something goes bad with it or the pedal actually isn't working when you get it, you could be really screwed. You just may have an expensive paperweight. So if you can, if you're buying from a dealer, that's pretty good. But if you're buying from a third party of some sort, I would probably ask them to, if they can just do a quick, audio demo or something with it for you to prove that it works, just to play it safe. Sometimes you can take the risk if you just get a good vibe about the person or whatever. Mm-hmm. If they have enough of especially again on Reverb, I don't want to keep on pushing Reverb. They're not the only place to buy, or eBay or whatever. But if they have a long history and, good responses, that seem genuine, then, you can feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But
on that note, so we know Reverb, we know eBay, and we know Craigslist. Those are the most familiar to most of us. Are there any other places that you think are worth beginning the hunt?
Yeah, jguitar.com, but that can be it can be pretty tricky, j-guitar.com. Okay. It's Japanese guitar, basically. The problem is that they don't really have any English translation, and sometimes the Google Translate works, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times you'll find somebody and they won't ship to the United States. So, you could have them ship it to a third-party shipper, but that adds to your cost. It's because you have to pay shipping twice, basically, on that.
Well, if nothing else, you can kind of see what are some things that are out there that you can, if it does interest you and it seems to be an impasse, you can look for it elsewhere.
Definitely. And I would also recommend, again, TC Gaki. Boy, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy there. He's actually on Sano is the guy's name over there. Send him an email. Tell him you're looking for something. Uh-huh. Like if you see something on J Guitar and they won't ship it to you, just say, hey, if one of these passes through your shop, can you let me know?
Okay.
So those guys are great there. I can't speak highly enough of TC Gaki. As I said, I've bought a ton of pedals from them. I bought probably about a dozen guitars from them over the years.
Wow.
Just love them to death, and just cool, fun stuff, and they just, like I said,
they might love you more.
Yeah, true. But they're very proud, though. They're like I said, most of these guys all came from the Japanese guitar factories that work there. So they love it when, Westerner shows up and just totally into Japanese guitars and pedals.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been highly informative. And I know that, when you preface this at the beginning, and actually when we were talking about this offline, you gave us basically the elevator ride to what's the tower, the Nagami Tower, from Die Hard.
Right. Yeah.
Crash and burn.
That was the long elevator ride version of let me tell you about these, the pedals. I know that there is a ton more that we can get into, but it's 101 for a reason. So please don't think that this is the complete story.
I haven't even mentioned half of the. I mean, I mentioned maybe, gosh, just again 101, just some of the top level of the pond here.
Right.
We're getting to the tadpoles, and all that stuff. So it's we're not getting into the plankton just yet. So
this is 101 part 1.
I guess so.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, there's a and not everything is good out there. But as I said, with any pedal, if you can't find a use for it, someone can. And maybe it's up to you to figure out the use for that thing. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. I will say, man, there are a ton of overdrives and distortions and fuzzes coming out of there. And one thing I will say, one guy that stands out to me is Banana Na. It's banana with an extra na at the end. And he does some kind of crazy, wacky, really off-the-wall stuff. A lot of pitch shifting and modulation.
It almost looks, and that could be deceiving. And I'm glad that you're getting, your sort of, hey, I like this stuff, which I think goes a long way for vindication, because the pedals themselves almost look like, something along the lines that you might see of other Chinese pedals that are like, what is this? This doesn't even look, this looks like a little kid pedal. What are you doing?
It does, and like one of them's like really tiny and everything like that. But no, they're really creative. They're really wacky.
Yeah.
So if you're into sound design and you're into making your guitar not sound like a guitar, it's a good place to go. A lot of this stuff gets kind of covered by Eventide pedals, but you've got to make a pretty big investment in that. And this stuff you can kind of get your feet wet.
Yeah.
And it's cool for gigging too. It's not like, I have to figure out which preset was it on my Eventide here. Before the gig, you just stomp on it and boom. It's stomp box friendly, gig friendly.
I've been accused of making my guitar not sound like a guitar, but I'm not doing it on purpose.
I do it on purpose. I mean, I'm filters, phase shifters, pitch shifters. Man,
sure.
Let me at them.
Well, man, this has been great. I'm so glad that we did this, and I am, my wheels are already spinning on, what are some other 101s that we can dip into your knowledge base and all of your expertise that you've gained over, 20 plus years of being involved so deeply into the gear world and really digging in and caring about it and liking it and loving it. Let's just say that.
Obsessed with it.
Yeah, for sure. I know that we'll have questions, I'm sure, sent to us. So yeah, if get excited, get out there, get informed, get some pedals and whatever else, and start having fun. But be careful. Don't throw all your wallet at it just yet.
Yeah, just get your feet. Definitely try some stuff out. You can go down the hole deep, and some of the stuff is really expensive, and a lot of it's worth it. A lot of the stuff is expensive for a reason. That's the thing. Again, free the tone. Gosh, you want to talk about? There's a pedal that he has that looks like just it's like green and red LEDs, and it looks like the mad scientist of Eventide. I'm trying to remember what that pedal's called either, but that's another great one. Expensive, but if you're, it costs as much as an Eventide pedal, so it's worth trying that to have something a little bit different than the guy who went to Guitar Center and got an H9 or whatever.
Right.
Don't be afraid to get your feet wet. I would again stress buying either from a reputable U.S. dealer who distributes it, or somebody who's bought one and brought it back here, or from Japan. Some of these other countries can be, like I said, a little dicey. Not that it's necessarily bad. There's some honest people everywhere. Yeah. There's honest people everywhere, but there's also some of these countries, there's people who just spend their time, making something
pedal
look
trolls.
Pedal trolls, yeah, and it's it's got the right looking box on the outside, but the inside's not right at all.
Yeah, cool.
And that's the thing. Get to know what these things look like. Look for pictures online. Look for the circuit board. Know what the parts should look like, and go from there.
Sounds good.
And if you find something cool, let me know too.
Excellent. Well, this has been a super blast, and I know what I'm going to be doing after the show tonight. Continuing what I've been doing during the show. So in the meantime, though, we are going to hop in the old El Camino and swing over and grab Jared, because he's got a fantastic Would You Rather for us. Don't you, Jared?
This week's Would You Rather is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's well, first let me do this. Would you rather? John Esterly sent us a Would You Rather. And I like the way you wrote this. This is different. It's kind of like it's pretty different than usual. So you're watching TV late at night. And you fall asleep. Your subconscious gives you the opportunity to play guitar in a band on TV.
Ooh.
But the problem is, you are watching Disney Plus. So your options are limited. So would you rather play guitar with the Muppets band? Dr. Teeth, the Animal, and the gang, or... I'm sorry. Miss Piggy is also the lead singer of that. So that must be the bad part of that whole deal. Or would you rather play guitar with Ariel, the Little Mermaid, on vocals, but the backing band is Sebastian and the rest of the Under the Sea Calypso musicians?
Okay.
I applaud John for sending that. This is very
quite
good.
a question.
I think that actually happened to him, it sounds like.
It's happened to all of us.
He swam down to the bottom of a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's happened to all of us.
Yeah. Okay. Tony Bolonsky.
Well, so if we do the Calypso thing, do I have to play under the water?
Yeah.
Under the sea.
No, but under the water. I mean, do I have to be submerged?
Oh, submerged.
How would I breathe?
No, it's all imaginative. So you can breathe anyway.
I can breathe underwater?
You get gills when you go under.
I'm trying that. I'm going to try that this week.
You get gills. Yep.
Between those two choices, I mean, I think Ariel's a little more attractive than Miss Piggy. So yeah, I'm doing the I'm doing the fish thing.
I think maybe you should reassess your.
I think it depends what you're into.
I mean, I like fish. Well, why not? So no, I think the Calypso thing would be a better choice for me. I think I could dig that groove a little bit more, especially with a crab that can just hit the
Yeah.
What are they called? Vibes.
The money note.
Hit the vibes.
The money note.
And I think it'd be cool to be have gills and be able to breathe underwater.
Okay. All right, that'll work.
Might be a little treacherous with electric guitar though.
True.
Jared?
Definitely the Muppets. I remember growing up with the Muppets when I was a kid, and I've been in a couple of bands where the girl singer couldn't sing very well, so that's something I'm used to. So, yeah. So I'm definitely going to go with the Muppets because I know what to expect.
Okay. Let's see. Chris, how about yourself?
Well, my answer is very similar to Jared's. I've played in bands with bad singers and with bad drummers. And, conversely, I've played in bands with good to great singers and good to great drummers. I always
Same here.
I always go for the band. I would rather play with a great drummer and a bad singer than a great singer and a bad drummer.
Yep.
So Animal, man, he's right up my alley, man. And you know what? We can turn it into an extended jam. We can do a noise jam. We can do a blues jam. We can rock out or whatever, and we can just drown out the singer. So there you go.
That's
I can
right.
dig it. I can dig it.
What about you, Todd?
Well, I am 100%. I wanna go jam with Floyd. You know, I on a serious heartfelt note, like the Muppets, like I can get actually emotional about that. And I was so excited on a film shoot that
Better lay off the estrogen.
we were doing a commercial out in California, and I was so excited because the studio that we were working with, it was like a block away from Henson's studios.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
as soon as like we were driving past that, and I see Kermit up there, I swear, like I got the feels big time, because that was like we waited every week for a new one. You know, it wasn't in rerun; it was real. We watched it in real time. The Muppets happening, and when I saw Big Kermit up there, we got to the place, and the first thing I did was call the studio and like, can I get a tour?
Wow.
And they said, normally yes, but we just started shooting for a thing, and we were on lockdown. And I was like, oh, dang. So at some other time. But anyways, yeah, I'm for sure going with the Muppets. Absolutely.
Once again, Tony Island.
Island.
That building's amazing too, because of course it was A&M, and it was actually Chaplin's studios, film studios. So the history there is just that place reeks of history.
Yes,
and also haunted, also haunted. So
ooh,
yes,
that's even more intriguing.
I believe Karen Carpenter's ghost has been seen there.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jared, for that. And thank you, John Esterly, for sending that in. And if you've got a fantastic Would You Rather for us, we would love to hear that. So please send that our way. Tony, we got to thank a few people before we let our good friend Chris go.
Yes, we do, because at this point of the show, Todd, we'd love to thank a special group of people. These are our executive producers. Now, you might be wondering, what is this executive producer? And maybe more importantly, how can I, a mere mortal, become one? Oh, it's very quite easy. It's very quite easy.
What's up, Jared?
I'm taking Jared lessons. Go over to patreon.com/the Guitar Knobs. Check out a couple levels in which you can participate. Become a sponsor, a patron of this very podcast. Each level comes with some really nice thank you gifts. Thank you. But as an executive producer, you get all the good stuff. And there's one thing more, Jared.
You get to have your name written on the thing, man.
Nope.
I'm not going to write it on the thing. What am I going to do?
It's actually typed on your phone.
Yeah.
You get to have your name read on the thing.
Okay, I'm going to read off this written thing here. So technically you were right the first time.
Right.
So special thanks to these executive producers. Moon Guitars. Vader and Pedals. Is that like Darth Vader in? Drew Lopez, John Halverson, Rick Calhoun, Trevor Gunberg, Elad Mizrahi, Jason Roush, Mike D, Richard Kendall, Mark Garton, Matt Hart, James White, Justin Jones, Anthony Gemolero, Bill Gola Guitars, John Esterly, author of our very sad but true Would You Rather this
Yes.
week. Once again, alone with Ariel and Sebastian the Crab. Anthony Lathrop, Stefan Lem, Michael Senchuk, Ken Sayers, Doug Christ, Darren Gregory, John Anglin, Tom Barrison, John Sluhan, Rusty Sneeden, Ralph Gottschalk from Wonderful Audio Technology, David Poe, Don Kloss, Gregory Randall, and Brett Hogarth. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Todd, you interrupted me.
Sorry.
Because we have a special group of executive producers. We like to call them our Grand Poobahs. These are the top of the heap. They even have to place a fez upon their heads while listening to the podcast. So special thanks to these Grand Poobahs. Tommy Manasco, Ricardo Igareda, David Kaminga, Brandon Wown Pickups, Hex Matos, Michio Murakishi, Bob Crouch, Jack Cadian, Sam Jett, Tyler Rhines, LSJ Music Company, John Williams, James Pennington, Adam Johnson, Steve Keys, Cody Foster, Science of Sound, Brian Robison, Jonathan Jerusik, Corey Nigro, Michael Van Zant, Tim Nowak, Jonathan Daly, Martin Cliff, Sean S. And Eddie Serratos. Thank you so much.
Right on. Thank you indeed. All right. Well, Chris, where can people find you in some way, shape, or form, and or anything you'd like to, shout out to the world?
Oh, let's see. Well, two things I wanted to add. The part of, I couldn't think of, the burbs of Tokyo. Saitama is the area. A lot of musicians live out there. So it's kind of like an hour train ride out of Tokyo. So Saitama, that's the place to go dig around to find a little bit better bargains, a little bit off the beaten path.
Okay.
The Future Factory was the Free the Tone kind of Eventide equivalent pedal I was thinking of. It's just nuts, and it's worth every single dollar. If you love sound design and you love coming up with wacky stuff, that's like the Ne plus ultra, of that. To find me, I don't do social media too much, but I do have an Instagram page. So Chris Gill, VH Writer is where you'll find me. And what else? I've got we did a very quick hit. Brad Talinsky and I just, my co-author of that book, we just did actually a quick hit of The Who. Centennial Publications. If you'll be on your grocery store somewhere, it's one of those quick hit magazine things. Very short. It's not very in depth, but if you like The Who, there's lots of pretty pictures and a couple little amusing stories here and there. But it's not the be all end all Who story. It's just kind of like The Who for Dummies. Basically, that's a project we just did. And other than that, I'll be competing with you guys out there for this stuff. So, but again, if you find anything cool, let me know. I love this stuff, and it's just, I can't get enough, 500 pedals and counting. And I still bring in about one or two a week, believe it or not, sometimes.
Wow.
So, sometimes I go on, I try to cut myself off a bit, but I'm binging lately. So, divide and conquer.
Sounds good. Tony?
Head over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the wares that I have available for sale. But by and large, what I do is custom work. So shoot me an email. Let me know what you're trying to do, what you want, materials, colors, all the fun stuff. I will take very good care of you.
All right. Jared?
Jared.allen.brandon on Instagram. I'm not on there a lot, but I see I have some messages now, and I'm going to answer them, and I will answer your message. So if you want to get a hold of me, jared.allen.brandon. My big face is on the picture, so yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you can shoot me an email, todd@theguitarknobs.com. You could also send me a DM on Instagram @guitarknobs. We would love to hear from you. Share and by the way, if anybody, and as a result of this episode, nabs any cool stuff, please share it with us. That would be really fun to see what y'all are doing. And go out on the Discord group, and I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about that on the Discord group as well. So, and if you need, you can go to the link, the bio link in Instagram to find out more about that Discord group and jump in, and the people out there will help you out with that. We want to say a huge thank you to Chris Gill for joining us again. One of many, I'm sure, I hope. And thank you so much for sharing as much of your time as you have and your knowledge.
My pleasure. I'd love to share this stuff. And the more we talk about this stuff, the more stuff comes to light. It's good for everybody. So, because, I may be wrong about stuff and I don't mind being corrected. It's an ongoing journey in this stuff. And the more we talk about, the more we keep the history of this stuff alive. And it's all for good.
Right on. Speaking all for good, make sure you check out Pedals for Ukraine, as we mentioned on Instagram. And if you need any further information on that, you can DM me and I'll try to hook you up. All right, everybody, have a fantastic Guitar Week. And go buy some Japanese pedals and subscribe.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on.
I win a prize.
You get all the Japanese pedals in the world.
All right, I got a burp. Oh.
That's a severe burp. Best thing is at night when you're walking down the streets and in the little doorways, they set up the little crêperies.
Oh, yeah.
My wife and I were there years ago, and I got a Nutella one.
Yeah.
Connie, they've got pancakes.
No.
There we go.
Make sure you tell them about swearing in the clap.
Are you in the bathroom or something? What?
No. Do you want me to go to the bathroom?
But there's a package of Chips Ahoy right here. How did this get here? As normal as you can be.
How's this? Yeah. Good.
Let me answer. Yes.
And I had like Nutella all over my face.
Kent, Jared, put the laser beams away. Thanks. Bye. He's going to be really mad at me. Jared, are you all settled? You ready to go there, cowboy?
I have been.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.